Hello, this is Dr. Brian Wallum with RX Vitamins for Pets, and this webinar is about biological terrain, what is it, and using nutraceuticals to influence clinical outcomes. And as you've seen this probably before on webinars, this is a big paradigm shift for a lot of people, and we're going to look at things quite a bit differently than you may be used to looking at them, but bear with me and I think you'll enjoy the entire webinar. So biological terrain, what is it? A term coined by Claude Bernard, and it refers to the extracellular fluid environment and its physiological capacity to ensure protective stability for tissues and organs of multicellular living organisms, you, me, cats, dogs, horses, etc. In other words, it's about the soil, kind of like the soil in your garden or house plants. How good is the soil, and how do you help maintain an optimum terrain or soil or extracellular fluid? How do you best support the pet's tissues and organs? And remember this, the cell membrane responds to the extracellular fluid, and there are many different kinds of proteins on the surface of the cell, but there's only two categories, receptors and effectors. And receptors receive signals, and when a signal comes in, the receptor changes, the receptor shape changes. A secondary signal in the cell binds to the receptor and opens the effector. This is activated so a signal molecule can move into the cell. Now, if the terrain is skewed for that cell, that doesn't happen very. And the importance of terrain, especially regarding genes. Genes are on-off protein switches in the cell. Now, the medium tells the genes when to switch on or off. And if the matrix is clogged up or unreadable, the terrain has changed, the gene, the genetic switch, if you will, gets stuck in the wrong position. And now some cell function is compromised. And think of animals as a petri dish or multi-petri dishes. Each ecosystem, the gut ecosystem, the liver ecosystem, the kidney ecosystem, etc., each one is a petri dish that needs to be maintained in the perfect harmony. So let's take a look at what type of petri dish, if you were in a lab, is needed to grow yeast, molds, and fungus. You'd need an acid type petri dish and actually oxidized. Viruses, they like more of an alkaline environment that's oxidized. Bacteria like an alkaline environment that's actually reduced. And homeostasis is just balancing the petri dish so that everything lives symbiotically. Every dog and cat, rabbit, giraffe out there has yeast, molds, funguses, viruses, but they aren't allowed to proliferate if the terrain is in balance. And this is very interesting. If you look up Rudolf Virchow, he was the father of modern pathology. And he says, if I could live my life over again, I devote it to proving that germs seek their natural habitat, diseased tissue, rather than being the cause of diseased tissue. So when the terrain changes and the tissue changes, it allows, depending on what the pH is, etc., either allows yeast, molds, funguses to proliferate, maybe viruses to proliferate, or bacteria to proliferate. Now let's look at the components of the biological terrain. They are the three main body fluids: blood, saliva, and urine. Now the blood, basically it's what the body's hanging on to. 60% plasma, 40% erythrocytes, transports hemoglobin, carries oxygen, carries large quantities of carbonic anhydrase, which we'll discuss in a moment, removes carbon dioxide from tissues, very important, via the lungs and the kidneys, and transports nutrients from the digestive system into the cells. Now, saliva is, in dogs and cats, you've got two primary secretions. It's a mucin protein containing mucus for lubrication, and it's interstitial fluid. Now, lymph is formed from the same interstitial fluid as saliva, and 2/3 of the lymph is formed in the liver and intestines. Now, the urine is what the body's eliminating versus basically the blood, which is holding on to whatever the body isn't eliminating, and urine is filtered blood, and it contains urea, creatinine, uric acid, urates, and the kidney has to regulate the excretion of sodium, potassium chloride, and hydrogen ions. And whatever the body has accumulated in excess, it's going to try and find its way out through the kidneys for. Now, the three main controls of the biological terrain are pH, oxidation reduction potential, and an overall mineralization. Now, these things are easy to measure on humans, not so easy to measure on cats and dogs. So we're going to take a little bit of leap of faith here. The discussion is the same. It's just very difficult to measure accurately all of these three controls in cats and dogs. So everything has its own pH. Stomach needs to be acid, small intestine needs to be alkaline, large intestine needs to be acid, saliva, urine have their best parameters if everything is functioning properly. And buffer systems maintain vital pH values. So the buffer systems of the body, the main ones: bicarbonate buffer system, protein buffer system, ammonia buffer system, phosphate buffer system. And you have to have sufficient quantities of sodium and potassium for these systems to function. Now, the number one is the bicarbonate buffer system. Happens in the kidneys, so healthy kidneys are very important. This is what removes the carbon dioxide, which gets converted into carbonic or breaks down, into bicarbonate and hydrogen. You need that carbonic anhydrase enzyme, which is very zinc dependent, and you don't want to break up this buffer system. It is so important to keeping the body from actually going into an acid state. Now, let's talk about the second control, oxidation reduction potential, or redox reactions. This is all about creating ATP and burning up toxins in the body. And as you probably remember, glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm, but now you get into the mitochondria and you get the citric acid cycle and then the electron transport chain. And this is how the ATPs are made. The cells need that energy, these ATPs, in order to function properly. The less ATP a cell makes, the more it becomes toxic, the more the body becomes toxic. And one of the things that really can throw off the Krebs cycle is, and mitochondrial function, are heavy metals. Now, mitochondria make the ATP, they burn up cell toxins, and also the mitochondria tell a cell when to die, so you don't create aberrant cells that turn into cancer cells. One of the things you need to try and eliminate from a pet's diet are heavy metals. And of course, they're in the air. There's nothing we can do too much about that. But they're also in pesticides, vaccines, some vaccines. They leach from cans, etc. So do your homework on heavy metals and see how you can help the pets that come into your clinic, hospital, eliminate some of the heavy metals that they are. And while it's up to the kidneys to do a lot of the pH balancing, it's the liver that deals with much of the neutralizing toxins via the mitochondria. So liver and kidney support for overall quality biological terrain are very important. And enzymes are in there too for the gut terrain. And anything you can do to facilitate mitochondrial function is going to enhance clinical outcomes, and we'll discuss some solutions near the end of this presentation. Now, overall mineralization, this is the third control. So you've got pH, you've got oxidation reduction potential, and now the overall mineralization of the body. And minerals are key in enzyme reactions. We need enzyme reactions. Minerals are supposed to come from foods, but it's much more difficult on this planet than it was 100 years ago when the soil was still very rich in minerals and hadn't been depleted. So you may need to consider adding minerals to the companion animal diet that of the pets that come into your clinic or hospital. Now, the pH of the gut, digestive enzymes, proper liver function, proper kidney function, these are the keys to restoring and maintaining optimum biological parameters. And you can make the assumptive leap that some of the biological parameters in every pet that walks into your office are probably askew. And there are only two reasons an animal gets sick. They are either toxic with something and or they're deficient in something. And either one of these can cause a shift in the biological terrain, which is going to start the cell to not function properly, which is going to promote a toxic environment and allow opportunistic organisms to take over that pet's body. Now, just ask yourself, are animals genetically programmed to get heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity, autoimmune diseases? My answer is no. And if the terrain is good, they're getting the proper nutrition, exercise, and have an emotionally stable environment in which to live, then you're going to have a pretty healthy pet for a long time. Always remember, the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism, but it needs the proper bioavailable nutrients, not just any nutrients, bioavailable nutrients, along with exercise and emotional stability. Now, nutraceuticals can assist in flushing out toxins, supporting tissue repair, changing pH, balancing minerals, replacing tissue deficiencies, helping digestion via enzymes and probiotics, and can assist with your wellness care protocols. Nutraceuticals can be an at-home remedy for those patients, particularly who don't want to come in for a wellness checkup or can't afford it or don't have the time. But at least you can make sure that the pet is getting the proper nutraceutical. Now, to make a big difference in companion animal health, try and get the pet parent to improve the diet. I know that this can be about impossible after 30 plus years in practice, but if you can do that, that's a great piece of the puzzle. Assume that there are enzyme deficiencies due to gut pH changes. There probably are. Assume that there's at least a small amount of leaky gut in every pet that comes into your office. That's not a big assumptive leap. About every 3 months, have a pet take a week of our hepatosupport and just do a little light liver flush, rinsing out. Same with the kidneys. Maybe the following week, do every 3 months for 1 week, do maybe a renal flush. The worse the diet, the more the terrain will be out of balance, and the more your work is cut out for you. And think in terms of improving cell function, not just eliminating patient symptoms, which you must do for the pet parent, but think of how do you really move that pet into a better health state. And wrapping it up, RX vitamins can be used in concert with most pharmaceuticals. There are some contraindications with our RX cranberry RX with warfarin and certain kidney stones, and you can find that on the RX website. Our formulas, they're easy to order, easy to use. We offer plenty of support, and the goals of a veterinary physician should be to change the biological terrain, for the better, remove toxins, supply whatever the pet is deficient in, and use nutraceuticals to support your wellness care program. Some key formulas to improve biological terrain, and you can use these for condition specific or use them prophylactically and don't wait for a problem to happen. Our RX-Zyme, our enzyme formula, our probiotic formula. The Nutrigest is our bowel healer and has herbs like aloe, ginger, garlic in it, and a lot of other things to help heal the bowel wall from leaky gut. Canine and feline minerals. We've also got our hepato support, our liver support, our canine and feline renal support, and the Ultra EFA is an excellent anti-inflammatory. RX vitamins are sold exclusively to veterinarians. If you have any questions, email me. You can call me, Dr. Brian Wallum, or visit the website rxvitamins.com. I thank you for listening and have a great day.